Right now, we're going strong in the 2024 offseason, and there's a lot of questions surrounding all 32 teams. What I want to do is go over the most commonly asked questions for all 32 teams pertaining to fantasy value. And I'm going to do it as quick as possible. Let's go. The New York Jets. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, how much fantasy value does this offense really have? I do think Garrett Wilson is going to be a top 12 receiver as long as Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, and Brees Hall is definitely going to be a top 5 running back. You've seen the explosion he had last year with a terrible offensive line, terrible QB play. Same thing with Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson was a top 24 wide receiver. Brees Hall was a top 5 running back, and that was with terrible quarterback play. I think Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be, MVP. If he shows a little bit of what he used to be, this offense is going to be dangerous. That's not even including Mike Williams. I don't think he has much fantasy value other than boom or bust, but he does help the offense. He does help take some eyes off of Garrett Wilson. So Garrett Wilson, top 12 wide receiver. Brees Hall, top 5 running back. With Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Buffalo Bills, is Josh Allen still a top 3 quarterback without all his weapons? He lost Stephon Diggs. He lost Gabe Davis. Not that Gabe Davis was much. He was obviously a boom and bust to the highest degree. But Stephon Diggs was a top 12 wide receiver for the last 4 years, and he was his number 1 option. We've seen Mahomes do it without his number 1 option. This year, we're going to have to see what Justin Herbert and Josh Allen does without their top wide receivers. So I think he's still a top 5 quarterback. I do because of his rushing upside, but am I confident in drafting him in the top couple of rounds? I am not. For the Dallas Cowboys, does the running back positions hold any value at all? They let go of Tony Pollard. This is definitely going to be a running back by committee, and you really don't have a main guy. I'm not confident in his running back group at all to have any value. Look for Dak Prescott to throw for 5,000 yards and CeeDee Lamb to be the top 5 wide receiver again in 2024. For the New York Giants, does anybody have value on this team? Daniel Jones, he has a little rushing upside. He had one decent year in all his years in the NFL. I don't see him doing anything with little to no weapons on the outside, no running game. They did sign Devin Singletary, but what is he, if anything? I don't think this team has any valuable fantasy assets. I wouldn't draft anyone from this team at all at this point in the offseason. For the Seahawks, does Kenneth Walker survive Charbonnet and continue his dominance as number 1 running back on that squad? I do think so. For the Rams, who's the wide receiver to own? Is it Cooper Kupp or is it Puka Nacua? And depending on which one, where do you feel comfortable drafting these guys? I honestly would be comfortable drafting either one of them. I would go second round. I wouldn't take either one in the first round. And whichever one falls to me at value in that second round, I would feel comfortable taking. I think he has a connection with both of these guys. As long as Stafford stays healthy, this offense is going to be booming with both receivers, Tyler Higbee coming back, Kyron Williams with the emergence of him as an RB1. I think this offense is going to do great things in 2024. For the Miami Dolphins, will A-Chain take over that running back 1 role, or do they still give it to Raheem Mostert? They signed him for another year. He's obviously 1 year older, but 16 touchdowns last year. It's hard to see them going a different option. I do think that they're going to work Raheem Mostert in, and they're going to have games where Devin A-Chain, where A-Chain gets you 20 touches. There's going to be games where he gets you 5. I think by the end of the year, A-Chain will be the number 1 running back in that offense. For the Chargers, do I feel comfortable drafting Justin Herbert? Not at all. With Josh Allen, he loses his weapons, but he has that rushing ability. He has the ability to give you, 10 touchdowns on the ground. Justin Herbert, he's athletic to a certain degree, but he's not going to give you that rushing ability. So I really don't feel comfortable drafting him. He lost his wide receivers. He lost his running game. They're going to put some guys around him. I understand that, but this is a rebuilding year for the Chargers and Harbaugh as their new coach. For the Philadelphia Eagles, is Saquon worth the number 1 pick? He went to a better offense and as a Giants, but is he worth a first-round pick for the Eagles? My opinion is no, because they're going to vulture touchdowns on the goal line between Jalen Hurts, Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott. I think he's definitely worth a second-round pick. If I can get him at the end of the second round, if I can maybe draft, a CMC, a Brees Hall at the beginning of the first round, and then draft him towards the second, that would be the way how I would want to do it. For the Patriots, is it Ramondre season again? Zeke's gone. Are they going to bring in anyone to take away touches from Ramondre? I think, in all honesty, he's all they have. He's all they have. What else are they going to do? They're going to give Ramondre the ball. Again, I do feel comfortable taking Ramondre in my fantasy draft this year. For the Denver Broncos, which wide receiver gets that alpha role? Is it Devin Mims? Is it Courtland Sutton? Is it Josh Reynolds? To be honest with you, it doesn't really matter. For my Las Vegas Raiders, is Devonta Adams still an alpha wide receiver? And is Zamir White a replacement for Josh Jacobs? I do think Zamir White has RB1 value. He's a top 12 running back this year. I'm not saying they're just gonna force feed him the ball like they did Josh Jacobs. They're gonna have a committee to a certain degree. He is a number one running back. We see what he did the last 4 games of the season without Josh Jacobs. He was a top 15 guy every single week. And where do I feel comfortable drafting Devontae Adams? Me, obviously, I'm a Raider homer, so I'm gonna say first round. But in all honesty, if you can get him in the second round, that's where he's best fit. Speaking of Josh Jacobs, for the Green Bay Packers, is Josh Jacobs going to continue his RB1? Does he have a chip on his shoulder? My guess is no, because the Raiders loved him and they gave him the ball a lot. He averaged 20 touches a game for most games, but he's 1 year older, coming off an injury-riddled season. Do the Packers value him that much? We'll see. My take is no. For the Bears, other than Dynasty and a redraft format, is Caleb Williams worth drafting? You got Keenan Allen, you got DJ Moore, you got DeAndre Swift. Is Caleb worth drafting? I would say yes, but I would pick him towards the end. I wouldn't take him with a top 5 or 6 round pick in my quarterback position. I would take him later on, maybe as a second tier quarterback. Get one of your studs and then draft Caleb towards the end, just in case he pops off. For the Houston Texans, is CJ Stroud a top 5 quarterback? Yes. Simple as that. For the Baltimore Ravens, is Derrick Henry going to lead the NFL in touching? I think so. One of the top rated running backs in free agency and one of the top offenses in the run game. It's a match made in heaven. Unlike Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to take too many touchdowns away on the goal line from Derrick Henry. For the Washington Commanders, does Austin Eckler still have fantasy value? My take is no. You got Brian Robinson, who they love, 1 year older for Austin Eckler. He doesn't have that rapport in that offense like he did with the Chargers. I think his days as a fantasy stud is over, unfortunately. For the Arizona Cardinals, is Trey McBride a tight end 1? I think he definitely has the ability to. We saw that connection with Kyler towards the end of the season, and I do think they're going to draft a wide receiver. But other than that, you really don't have too many weapons aside from James Conner. So I think Trey McBride is going to be the number 1 target in that offense. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, should you stash Justin Fields at the end of your fantasy drafts? I would say no. Not only is Russ Wilson going to start, he's going to play most of the games, but Justin Fields wasn't that good as a fantasy quarterback in Chicago. He's going to be even worse in Pittsburgh. For the San Francisco 49ers, is CMC going to 3P for RB1? I would say yes. Other than getting hurt, I don't think there's a scenario where he doesn't finish as the RB1. For the Tennessee Titans, is Will Levis worth stashing with Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins on each side? My take is no. He has a little rushing upside, but at the end of the day, he's not worth stashing in a redraft. In Dynasty, he's worth a stash, but not in redraft. For the Saints, does Alvin Kamara get back to that RB stud when he's going to get 75 to 85 catches? My take is no. Unfortunately, I watched Derek Carr for 9 years, and he did support running backs, and he did get them a lot of carries and a lot of touches out of the backfield, but I just don't see it in that offense. For the Vikings, is Justin Jefferson still the wide receiver 1 with shaky quarterback play? I don't think he's the wide receiver 1, but I do think he's still a top 5 receiver, and you could feel comfortable drafting him towards the end of the first round. For the Bucks, is Rachaad White going to be a top 5 running back again? My take is no. He did have a lot of receptions last year, but there was also a lot of injuries at the running back position, so I don't think he's going to repeat as a top 5 running back. For the Jaguars, is Travis Etienne going to hold up as the RB1, or is Tank Bigsby going to get some work? He's definitely going to get some work, but Travis Etienne is the workhorse. Trevor Lawrence trusts him. That offensive staff trusts him. He's going to, once again, barring injury, I do see him finishing as a top 12 running back once again. For the Colts, is Anthony Richardson going to have a 3,000 yards passing, 1,000 yards rushing season? Again, barring injury, I see this happening. He played in 4 games, and he was on the trajectory to get that. So I do think as long as he stays healthy, which is hard to do, I do see him getting 3,000 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing. For the Browns, is Nick Chubb's career over? They have Jerome Ford. He showed promise last year. I do think that Nick Chubb is going to get work. He's going to come back and obviously play, but he's not what he used to be. He's not worth drafting in a redraft format. For the Bengals, is Jamar going to finish finally as a wide receiver 1? Tyler Boyd's gone. T. Higgins is still there, but he's shaky. He's up and down, boom and bust. Jamar Chase has a chance to finish as a wide receiver 1, but he won't because of the receptions. He has the yardage and the touchdowns every year, but he's never going to be that 110, 115 catch guy, which hurts in the PPR format. For the Panthers, is Bryce Young going to make Deontay Johnson fantasy value? I would say no. I just don't trust him as a quarterback. I need to see it to make it happen. He had, terrible options last year, so you really can't base off of 1 year. But at the same time, I just don't see him and his size holding up at the NFL front. Will Kirk Cousins finally make Kyle Pitts a stud? I do think so. We saw what he did with TJ Hawkinson. He left throwing to the tight end. I do think Kyle Pitts is finally worth drafting in fantasy. For the Lions, who's the RB to own? Is it David Montgomery or is it Jamar Gibbs? I do think Jamar Gibbs has higher value, but depending on where you can get David Montgomery, he might be worth stashing later on because Jamar Gibbs is most likely going to be our first round draft pick, and that's high for my taste, being a D-Mon is going to get a lot of the goal line work. I think the D-Mon is worth stashing in maybe the 3rd or 4th round. And finally, for the Kansas City Chiefs, does Mahomes deserve to be drafted as a top 3 quarterback again in those top 3 rounds? I still say no. He's obviously going to have the ability to throw for 40 touchdowns and the ability to throw for 3+ touchdowns every single week, but I just don't trust him with those weapons. Marquise Brown is good, but we need to see it. We thought he was going to do the same for Lamar Jackson, and that didn't happen. So do I trust him with the Chiefs? Yes. Maybe the same as Juju. He's going to be maybe a top 30 receiver, but he's not going to make Mahomes a top 5 quarterback, even a top 3, and he's not draftable in those top 3 rounds. Those are the most asked questions for fantasy drafts in the offseason of 2024 as it stands today. Thanks for tuning in to today's video. Remember, subscribe to see more content from me and everyone here at Just in Time Media.